So, ladies and gentlemen, the DNC cannot help themselves but to shoot themselves in the dick on a regular basis now. And this is getting embarrassing. So let me walk you through this story here. The DNC takes step towards ousting David Hogg as vice chair. For those of you who don't remember, David Hogg has been on a bit of a campaign or press campaign tour to tell everybody, you know what, it's time for reform. Yes, we should challenge the bad incumbents. Yes, we should challenge the geriatrics. Yes, we need to change the Democratic Party so that in a race against somebody like Trump, it's not even a question and we could absolutely destroy him. And when you shake up the status quo fights back. I mean, we've seen this throughout history, right? A young up-and-comer trying to challenge the status quo, and the status quo goes really low in response and breaks out all the stops. So let me walk you through it, but bear in mind, the story that we're getting is, this actually has nothing to do with that. Like, nah, it doesn't have to do with him being on this tour saying we need to reform, etc. We need to do primary challenges. It's got nothing to do with that. That's like misinformation. So here, let's dive into it. The Democratic National Committee is moving forward with a challenge to David Hogg's election and that of another DNC vice chair just months after they attained their roles. The challenge centers on a procedural squabble, but Hogg, 25 years old, is alleging it is connected to his plans to spend $20 million trying to oust older Democratic members of Congress in primaries. Quote, "It is impossible to ignore the broader context of my work to help reform the party, which loomed large over this vote," Hogg said in a statement. The DNC's Credentials Committee voted 13-2 with 3 abstentions to void the February elections of Hogg and Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta as vice chairs. Now, let me pause here to point out. So this guy, Malcolm Kenyatta, who's also losing his spot, he's actually... I've seen some comments he's made publicly, and he seems to be more pissed off at David Hogg than he is at the DNC who's ousting him. It's very weird. He's like, oh, Hogg is trying to make this all about himself. It's not about him. I actually got more votes than Hogg did, so I shouldn't be removed at all. It's very weird that instead of standing in solidarity with somebody you're being ousted with, you're kind of more pissed off at Hogg than you are at the DNC. Very strange. All right, let's continue. The resolution will now go to a full vote of DNC members. If it passes, the election for the 2 vice chair roles will be re-administered. A losing candidate in February vice chair race, Kalen Free, has alleged that Hogg and Kenyatta were elected under a flawed tabulation process. So perhaps you would say stop the steal? You'd like them to stop the steal? Kick these guys out? Get the true the vote here? Hogg said in his statement that he had nothing to do with the alleged procedural flub and that too many leaders in the Democratic Party are asleep at the wheel. He has caught the ire of many congressional Democrats with his plans to try to oust veteran Democratic lawmakers through his PAC, Leaders We Deserve. DNC Chair Ken Martin has publicly and privately admonished Hogg for getting involved in Democratic primaries while serving as a top DNC official. It's an unpaid position. This is an unpaid position that David Hogg has. Top DNC role. He's not even getting a fucking paycheck for it. What are you talking about? Martin said in a statement he is disappointed to learn that before I became chair, there was a procedural error in the February vice chair elections. Pro-Trump operative and influencer Alex Brusewitz put out a statement blasting the vote as a coup and saying he strongly opposes removing Hogg as a DNC vice chair. David Hogg's activism has significantly bolstered support for President Trump, inspiring countless Americans to align with the MAGA movement. His influence as a skilled operative has been invaluable. So they say, bro, we have these bylaws, and these bylaws say that, like, we need to have more women and more people of color. And so you guys actually winning was a bit of and Malcolm Kenyatta is black, by the way, but they say, for gender reasons, we didn't hit the quota. And so there was a tabulation error. And so now we got to kick you out. And they are swearing up and down. That's what this has to do. It has nothing to do with what he's been saying. I have a fucking bridge to sell you. If you truly believe their line of bullshit from the DNC. This 100% has to do with the mild criticisms. By the way, people are pretending like this guy is like me. He's not. I've heard him say a lot of things I disagree with, right? He's not exactly clear as to who he wants to represent the party moving forward. And half the time it's on substance, and then the other half the time it's just about age. I've heard him say positive things about Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is cut from the same cloth as Chuck Schumer. These people are not prepared to handle the Trump era. You know, the people who are prepared, it's Maxwell Frost, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Rashida Tlaib. There's a list of people who are just flat out great, and they're not getting the burn they deserve. They're not. And so he's a little unclear. If you're praising Hakeem Jeffries, which, I don't know, maybe it's strategic on his part where he feels like I can't piss off the Speaker of the House because then that'll undermine what I'm trying to do in other ways. I don't know. Maybe it's strategic. Maybe it's not. Maybe he actually likes Hakeem Jeffries. But if you're defending Hakeem Jeffries, then I don't fully agree with your view, your vision for the party either, because he's part of the problem. And that's pretty obvious to anybody who's being honest about this. So, but guys, the fact of the matter is this. Even David Hogg's just very vague, bare bones, minimal amount of reformism, even that they view as a threat. Because the DNC is a protection racket. The DNC, they have all these consultants, all these staffers that they contract with, that they make a lot of money. They give these people a lot of money. And it doesn't matter if they win or lose. They're the ones that the party keeps going with, right? And so the status quo is so entrenched. There are so many career insiders. A lot of these politicians, they sell out the most to corporations, so they raise the most money for their congressional races, and then they end up winning because, usually if you're an up-and-comer and a progressive, you can't raise big money, and you don't have name recognition, so, the geriatric corporatist ends up winning. And so they really view, in theory, they think, oh yeah, we need to reform the party. We need to improve so we can beat Republicans. But in practice, when it actually comes to reforming, they literally circle the wagons and they go, nope, the DNC can't support primaries in any way, shape, or form. That is a fucking lie. So many times, the DNC has taken a side in a primary, but guess which side they take? They take the side of the person that has the most big money. They take the side of the person who's been in Congress since 1976, and they're 80 years old and this far away from being put in a home. That's what they do. So it's this total bullshit where they're like, how dare you? You can't take sides in a primary. We never do that. They do it all the time. What David Hogg is saying is, why not put party resources behind younger people, behind vibrant people, behind people who actually have bold progressive ideas, behind people who will actually fight Trump aggressively? And when it actually comes time to change the status quo, no, the status quo will fight back. They are entrenched. They are powerful. They have a lot of money. And they don't care. You get the sense they would rather lose with these milquetoast geriatric corporate centrists than win with young, bold, progressive, anti-Trump, social democratic superstars. And so it's a tale as old as time, right? If you actually have a vision, you have an ideology, you want to change things, you want to reform things, even if it's just a little bit, you hit a brick wall of resistance. Because ultimately, they care more about the money, they care more about the power, they care more about careerism, they care more about keeping the gravy train going. And so do not buy their shit for 1 second that, it was a tabulation error and actually we're violating the bylaws of the gender. It's like, what are we talking about here, bro? What are we talking about here? So it's a real shame. I've reached out to David Hogg to see if he'd like to come on Crystal Kyle and Friends and talk about his perspective on this. I'm interested. I'm also interested what his broader plans were and are. Exactly what kind of people are you gonna support? Like I said, if you're backing Hakeem Jeffries, look, I have to question your judgment on that front. He should not be leading. He's just like Chuck Schumer. He needs to go away. So, but this is what happens when you try to take on the powerful. This is what happens. They fight back. And what people need to realize is the only power we have, we as in the outsiders, the only power we have is in numbers. The only power we have is the power of the people. We don't have that institutional power. We don't have that old guard type of power. We're not entrenched. We're not in the club, right? And so the only way to fight back is to make a lot of noise, to be aggressive, to make phone calls, to put pressure on these people to say, how fucking dare you? How dare you? The only voice that's out there calling for actually fixing the party, even if I don't agree with every way in which he wants to do that, the only one doing it is being kicked out. It's really incredible. And it really goes to show you how fucking ossified the party is. How they're just addicted to being weak, pathetic losers and protecting those in the club. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.